And as you guys know, I have been posting these recordings in the OCA YouTube channel for those that are excited about listening to something at night. We have those for you. All right, so I laid out an agenda. Hopefully you guys all got it. It was basically consistently, going through it, any updates on the C4 diagrams, and then I took a stab at our first use case that I want to take you guys through, since that's the first time we've done it. So there's a lot to talk about and walk you through what I've got there, and then we could talk about some next steps. Okay, so that's the agenda for the day. Adam, I don't know if you, Bill, and crew have got another C4 set of diagrams. I didn't see the usual branch come in, so maybe you didn't get to it this week. Is that true, or did you get something done?
That is actually true. So no, we didn't get to the C4 diagrams. I know Bill and I did meet yesterday with the SCAP V2 endpoint data collection group.
Okay.
And they have taken up the mantle, so to speak. Mitch, I don't think he was able to make that particular instance of the meeting, but the idea was that the three of us would attend that meeting and see how they do with the posture assessment portion of the architecture to make sure that we got it right. I think that was one of the things we had talked about previously.
Yep.
Was, getting the ASCAP people involved so that that telling the truth and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's the state of it at this point. So we kind of walked them through a little bit about what that diagramming notation is, how to use it, and then when they got into the details, they started changing a few things around. So it's good that they were looking at it.
Yeah, that's great. Are they comfortable? It seems like they're comfortable then with the C4 diagramming, Adam.
For now, yeah. I mean, it's a small learning curve, right? So it'll take a little bit of time to get used to it. But yeah, I think it'll end up well, I think.
Great. No, that's good. That's an excellent step. It's nice to tie them in, and I think that I could see a process now where they can continue to do what we're doing, but we can then populate our V2 prototype project here in OCA and then link it to what we're doing here. So that sounds great.
Was their response generally positive in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. It was, yes. I think it was positive. I mean, they had where they had sticking points was in the nitty gritty details. Like, I don't know if you remember the diagram, but there was this manager component, and then inside the manager, we had things like an aggregator, a health check, an orchestrator, things like that, that they hadn't seen before. So they were a little. And David, I think you were there, right? So you might have additional context to provide, but yeah, all in all, I think they were comfortable with that notation.
Yeah, I'm part of the SCAP community, and I'm fully supporting using the C4 levels of diagrams. We're fully behind that. So, like he said, it was bits of details, not the methodology.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's what I would expect. Yeah, is the detailed conversation. Great.
So one thing we did talk about was the context diagram, the top level of the C4, and I'm looking at the 3 use cases that you sent out, Russ. The phishing attack, the firewall, and the vulnerability assessment. And we were talking in that context diagram about who talks to posture assessment. And so if we had a use case for somebody talking to the posture assessment system, that'd be great.
Excellent. That's actually where I'm headed. So I'm glad you mentioned that, David. So let me walk you through some of the diagramming you did around use case 1, because it is starting to ask those questions and diagram out, and that is a good conversation, because I try to figure out how are we going to answer some of those use cases. And I reached out to our use case guy, Dave, to see if he can help me a little bit. So okay, so let me share. You guys have anything else on that before I go to the next topic?
No, sir.
Okay. And Adam, do you intend to do another C4 diagram? I guess the update would be after you calibrate with the SCAP data collection management team, you maybe recalibrate the diagrams to what they feel are comfortable with. Would that be a next step for that set of work?
Yeah, I think that's a great next step, and in parallel, anything we're able to do at the context level with these use cases.
Yes, yes, yes. Context level. Okay, so we'll stay. Yeah, I think there's plenty to do at the context level because you'll, as you see in these diagrams, as out a use case, you then start hitting more components and things, and so that it does get fairly wide, even just with one use case. So we'll try and do context around it. So let me share the use cases. I did put them in to Duncan's favorite format out there. So we do have the markdown files are now out there posted, and so I'm looking at it now. And Doug Austin, I talked to him the other day. He's going to try and help me do a little bit more, but based on what I've got here. But the use case one is the one I took. Just to familiarize yourself with it, right? It was the one about the malware phishing attack. And what I did is I read through this, and again, we can iterate on the use case if we think it's not complete or it needs embellishment in certain areas. But this is what we'll start with. So I'm using that as my scope. And so what I did is I read through all of these things of what was happening in the malware case. And this is, again, from the end user point of view. I'll talk a little bit about later that we'll need personas for the actual, security administrators that are behind this thing, because it is mentioned in here. So that's one of the things I reached out to David for. But I took a look at all this good stuff. And so that's use case one, and that's the one we're going to focus on as we discussed previously. And the idea here now is to start building these C4 diagrams, of which I'm a rookie, so I'm not going to be as good as Adam, Bill, and Mitch on this stuff. But I took 2 swipes at it, so let me share this with you guys. Let me get this out of the way. Get out of the way. Okay, here we go. So I took 2 shots at it. I took the first shot at it here. And again, I don't think this is 100% right, and I know I need my experts in C4 to help me. I did send you guys, Adam, Bill, and Mitch, this initial diagram when I built it, knowing I'm not correct, but love edits. And I think it's more of a system landscape level because it does have multi-components. I'm not trying to break down those things to components yet, but we will. And what I did is just as you can see, I took Bob is the PC workstation guy, and then we have malware that shows up here. And then we've got, it was a mention of a scan that found the malware. There was a mention of something in his email that also is scanning his email for malware. So those are kind of 2 systems, right? Typical security controls that are deployed in a network that are scanning Bob's workstation, looking for malware. So kind of put that in here, right? It's one of the systems that we're going to have to deal with, right? And it's monitoring, this one's monitoring files on Bob's system, and this one's monitoring his email, looking for malware, just malware. That's all we're looking at, right? Then what I did is I tried to draw in what happens next. Well, when these guys find malware or scans, right, they do send events out, right? These systems continue to send events out. A SIM will catch it. A SOAR could possibly deal with it. A threat intelligence system definitely will collect it. So these are the kind of systems that will get events from these 2 types of scanners, right? So I just put these 3 down. These are the only 3 I took out of our architecture that seemed relevant for the malware use case. There may be more. But I just thought I'd start with these. So we kind of know this. And they do mention it in the use case. The SIM system got involved. The source system got involved. And the threat intelligence was in the background, I think, doing something. So I put that here. So you'll see we've got the events here that feed in going from the workstation through the monitoring programs up to the SIM. Okay, so far?
Yes.
Okay, great. So then the other side of that, there was some mention of some actions were being taken. So you can see these little brown lines here are coming the other way, which is what are your administrators doing out here, your system administrators? And I wrote them down here. There's a SOC analyst, an IR analyst, and a threat intelligence analyst. And I tried to write down some of the things that they typically do. You correlate events and you detect malware, and typically they'll do some tactical isolation of endpoints over here through talking to the workstation or to control it. The incident response team is running their playbooks, right? They're doing case management on the actual incident that came in. So there's typical things that are going on here. And then the threat intelligence is correlating events from all over the place, including vulnerability scans all over. It may update configurations to defense the malware from the firewall on, and we'll get to that later, but kind of worried about the network and the threat side of this and how to correlate that information and determine how to protect itself from these attacks coming out from the malware or the malware going out improperly to the unauthorized networks. So I put these down here as other personas we're going to have to deal with. And I kind of put the NIST stuff over here: identify, protect, defend, and respond, to remind us to try and align as we can to the NIST methods, if you will, as we start decomposing some of this stuff. And so you can see there's little brown things going back because there's different interactions that will happen by each of these systems to the workstation to react to or get some context for the malware. So again, very macro, but I kind of built this picture to kind of capture the use case. So let me stop there. I'm sure I missed things, and I'll be happy to take input or edits for this. I did post these out in our GitHub, and so you're welcome to do what you want with them and edit them. They're draw IOs, and as you can see, these are SVGs that I generated off the draw IO. But this is pre-OCA, so let me stop there because the next one I drew is, okay, what if OCA is in the picture? What changes? So let me stop on here and see if there's any comments for trying to capture the use case in this picture.
Some of the sampling, the testing may be resident on the device that got the contamination, so it's not necessarily a scan. Does that? I don't know that matters. I'm just flagging it just in case.
Okay.
Ross, I think you're in territory that I don't understand as well with the landscape diagram because I haven't actually tried to put one together before or really look at them. I know that when we were doing the context diagrams and container and component diagrams,
right?
The arrows we tried to make the arrows more I don't know, like bi-directional. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Where it made sense, right? So I don't know if some of the brown arrows could technically be bi-directional with some of the black arrows. And then the second comment I have really is about the brown arrows. So like if you look at the one on the left, investigates response to malware events on, I think you were relating that back to something a SOC analyst or an incident response analyst would do. Is it really the people that are doing that, or are they going through the SIM in this case?
Well, I think the intention here and I think you're right, this may not be right, Adam, but all of these systems are independent of each other. I mean, a lot of them do take the same feeds and do something different with each of them. Not unusual to happen with all the overlap that we have with some of this stuff. And they're looking at different things. And the threat system, by the way, will talk to the SIM and the SIM will talk to the SOAR. So these will talk to each other. I didn't capture that yet, but they certainly do, right? But the intention here was the correlation of this. The reason I put that here is the threat intelligence system. And again, I could talk to my threat intelligence experts on the phone here, are correlating a lot of things, not only from the endpoint, but maybe from the firewalls and the IPSs and all the network stuff on this particular event, as well as any network, vulnerabilities, right? They're getting the feeds from the threat intelligence services. So they're on a very much a very focused network threat intelligence and network action plane here. These guys, the SOC guys, are more on the, dealing with the whole enterprise system, everything between apps and systems and networks and so forth. And they tend to be more focused on, in this case, looking at what these particular events are sending to them and how they correlate to other events, and then taking actions like isolating them, something tactical, isolating them or quarantining them or backing something up, right? Those kinds of things. There is a fuzziness between those two brown lines, but I think as we decompose, we'll get a little clearer. So maybe part of me says, and I may want to go even higher level on the description here, because I think you're going to find overlap between all three of these brown lines and what happens from an action point of view from these operations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that. Yeah, there will be some overlap.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, should it is it the software system that's doing the investigating, or is it a person that's doing the investigating using the software system, or is it just a person inspecting Bob's PC, that sort of thing? That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, it's interesting to get to that question. It's actually a blend, right? As events come in, all of these systems are doing some amount of correlation, sometimes even some automation underneath the covers. But then there's a person that can, go do something down here physically. just launch a endpoint product and do a quarantine, right? Typical of what a SOC will do. SOAR, same thing. It's driving APIs for any of these systems to go do something. So the person can be there doing it physically by hand, or you can have an automation system or a run book in the case of the guys over in the SOAR that could do it for you. So there's a blend, I think, on some of this. But I think some of that again,
Right.
once we get into yeah.
Okay.
So, so
sorry,
are you asking like, would the brown line actually be going from the SOC analyst to the SOC system versus from the system up to the PC? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically. So, like when I think of a SIM, I'm thinking of something that's passive that doesn't take action. It's a monitoring event, and it correlates. It alerts, right? It does alerting.
Right.
But then it's something else that goes out and does the investigation, or someone else that does the investigation. So, but generally, yes, that's exactly right. So I'm wondering, like, where should the brown lines actually extend to people?
I think you're right. I think they should. I think they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you would have the brown line going from the SOC analyst up to the SIM.
Yep.
And then if you're saying that the analyst is doing something from the SIM, like, kicking off, the EDR to isolate the host,
Yeah.
then you would have another black arrow going from the SIM to the EDR, right? And then the EDR going to the host.
Yeah.
And that's all very true, Rose. The idea will be, as we decompose this into very specifically looking at the SIM system, as we get to the component level diagrams, we'll get to very much that level of detail. At the macro level, if I did every action you could possibly do here, you'd have 100 lines.
Oh, understood. Yeah.
Right. Yep, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. That's the kind of thing we're going to have to do then is lay out, what kind of, and by the way, there are things that go between this SIM system and other systems in response even to a malware.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we just haven't put them here, but they do exist. So I think you're right, guys. I'll put some brown arrows here. I kind of left them out here. I don't know why. I just forgot to get down to this level, so fair enough. Okay, good comments. And I will be looking for help. I'll talk to you about it later, but I could use anybody that's an expert or understands any of these boxes. I'm going to be coming after you for some help, because we're going to have to decompose this. And that's where I was watching Adam, Bill and team do theirs, and they only had SCAP and maybe one reference to threat intelligence. I've got 6 systems here already. And so I could see the diagram 6 times 4, but at least 25, 30 diagrams just out of this one scenario. When I get down to the component level, never mind going even lower than that. So I see we're going to need some help to do that. So anyway, this is the idea. Any other comments? Good comments, by the way. Great comments. Keep them coming. Okay. If not, I will show you then. What I did then is I took this diagram, just trying to grab the core of what the use case was talking about. And then I said, well, let's take a look at our OCA diagram, which is in the, again, in the GitHub, the big one, and try and lay in. As you can see, there's no OCA stuff in here at all. So what I tried to do here, the gray boxes represent the OCA components. And this is where I'm a little out of my bounds of knowledge here. So please help me. You're going to need me help for this also. But the idea here now is we have the Ontology system, right? And a common message bus. So theoretically now everything's going to be communicating over this bus instead of going directly to each other. So I added that in here. This is where again, I think I went off bounds, and this is where, my SCAP team is going to help me. I don't know when you do a scan. I know, when you do scans of systems, posture data, if you will, I imagine it goes to somewhere in your posture system. I just put posture attribute repository based on the diagrams you guys have drawn so far, but we got to kind of figure out when these things are scanning and come up with something. I think it's part of a posture assessment, I think. Who do they talk to on this SCAP side? I just put this here because
Good question. I think that wouldn't actually be. I think it would get posture data from the posture. What did we call the system? I can't even remember. Bill, help me out. The posture assessment.
There's a collector manager.
Posture assessment
Thank you.
system, I would
Well,
say, or posture collection system.
thank you. And we get it from
I
that,
would
right?
call
So-
that posture collection system and make it a blue box like the software system.
Correct.
Posture collection system? Okay, posture collection system, got it. So would that be this thing over here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I wasn't really sure. I was kind of looking at your diagrams. And as you can see, you know, so this stuff coming in is one flow, and then this stuff going out to talk to these guys is another flow. So, you know, I haven't done that well. I haven't represented it well, but there is, I think, two. One is a query, as you just talked about, to get posture information from this side. And then the other one is a population from that side. And I didn't do well here representing it, but I do want to work on that with you guys.
No, that's good. I think it's fine. Like Bill was saying, if we turn that blue, and I think that the software system that we talk about for the SCAP architecture is, we do have a question there. It is posture collection system, isn't it? Posture assessment or posture collection system, one of the two.
Okay.
And then I have another question about this view.
Yeah.
And I may have missed discussions because I think I missed a meeting somewhere along the way. But at one point, I think we were talking about not showing like the broker in the ontology as a box, but as but relying on the transport notation essentially, or at least that's what I call it, for the lines using
I see.
notation.
Okay.
I just don't know. Like, I mean, I know that there are some who want to not lose the fact that there's this whole other set of things that you have to deploy and manage in terms of software,
Mhm.
not leave it so implicit in terms of being just like a subnote to a label on a line.
Yeah.
But yeah, this diagram, this view would be potentially less cluttered if we were able to remove the ontology section in the middle, that gray box in the middle,
Yep.
and put something like OpenDXL ontology as a subnote, sort of like we have software system underneath all these labels, under the labels for like posture data, and then underneath that would be the bracketed OpenDXL ontology or something like that, or just ontology,
Ontology. Yeah, just,
whatever is meaningful to us.
so put it in.
And again,
Okay.
fine, sorry.
So you suggest to put it in the note under the endpoint protection system, put just the ontology there underneath those things?
Forrest, can I jump in here?
Yes,
Yeah,
please,
please.
Forrest. Yeah,
Thank you.
go for it.
All right, so let's wax philosophically about the use of this term ontology here for a minute. I'm curious to get some views on how we're talking about implementing it in this case. So, for example, one way to do that would be to make a declaration that every piece of data that flows around the system and the systems that actually use and read that data is encoded according to terms and definitions and relationships that are identified in the ontology. I'm guessing that's not the intent.
Right.
So other options would be to find or to map all of the concepts and data elements that are floating around the system, map them to representative concepts and terms in the ontology, such that becomes like a broker in between them. So in either case, I think it is a situation where you put a note somewhere saying, oh, by the way, we're going to leverage the ontology to help us integrate the meaning or standardize the meaning of the data that's flowing around the system. The ontology itself doesn't flow stuff around or doesn't act as a translator bus somehow in the middle. That's not how an ontology would be implemented. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that even makes sense.
Yep.
It's hard to do this without drawing on a whiteboard.
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, it does, Forrest. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So what
Okay.
I'd like to follow on with that if I may.
Yes.
So what we've done in the past is, so I think this is where Adam was going, is that instead of representing the ontology as a box, you basically represent the data and the kinds of information flowing with the lines that you have.
Yep.
And the lines, the C4, the reason for using the C4 is to give us some structure around how to draw these things, and the lines have labels on them that basically describe the kind of flow in between them. And of course, those labels probably should be something that you could find in an ontology. Vulnerability data, command and control,
Yeah.
what have you.
Ideally, we would like to define a knowledge model, an ontology-based knowledge model that contains both the data elements that are passed between all of these blue boxes, and formalizes the actual passing, and formalizes all of these arrows as processes in the same ontology all around. So you know what is being passed, where it's being passed, and when it's being passed. You can formalize all of those things, so you can have your ontology can show the processes that unfold over time.
Right, we can have sequencing if you would like. But what I wanted to get at was using boxes versus lines, essentially. So in the C4 model, typically the idea of a container is supposed to be a process. But I think, and if you wanted to represent every box represents a process, then essentially everything is going to be connected to a broker or some broker thing. If you want to just talk about it from that, if the drawing is going to represent processes that are related to each other, that would be the container view. The system view is going to be a higher level view of that. You wouldn't represent containers in that case. And then if we want to stick again with the C4 model, the next level be up below, so that I just mentioned the level above containers, the level below containers is components, and that's, again, if you follow the C4 model, and we can break with that if we'd like, but within that you'd see how, let's say, modules within that process, let's say it could be packages or modules that you would use that would be implement portions of the process. Modules being Python and packages being Java. Thing. So now using the lines in a container diagram is breaking tradition, essentially, with the C4 model. You're essentially ignoring the fact that there's a broker in there. But the reason you do so is for efficiency, to represent, like, this process is communicating with that process, and it might be via a broker or via an intermediary process like a broker. But we're going to elide that for the moment, because it's really not important with respect to what we want to represent, which is the actual information that flows between these systems or between these processes. So my vote would be, in this context, would be to use lines so that we don't have everything connecting to a broker, because otherwise, then it makes it really difficult to draw. But,
and the other thing, just you know, Mitch, I mentioned it. I tried to actually make it, as you can see, system landscape level, not component level, for that very reason. But I may not be doing system landscape properly, but that's the intention of going to that layer.
Yeah,
we're going to break it down to components, because as you can see, the difficulty I have is I've got 8 different types of systems in here. So, you know, it's I have to macro represent that somewhere, so that when I do get to the components, we can digest it and make it easy to understand as we break each of the combinations down.
Yes. So at this level, let me ask you a question then, or let me pose the question to the group. What do we want to see here? Do we want to see relationships between the ontology and these other systems, or do we want to see the relationships between each of the systems? Let's say, because right here it's perhaps it might be difficult to understand the relationship between a SIM and a SOAR and a threat intelligence system. They all point to ontology, but, you know, they may or may not be using the ontology in a particular way. So if we're trying to represent the relationships between, let's say, SIM, SOAR, and threat, email protection, and endpoint, then we should just have lines that actually point to from one thing to the next. Now, if that becomes a big rat's nest tangle, then that doesn't achieve what we want. So the question is, what do we want to represent here? Are the relationships of these systems to the ontology, in which case they all relate to the ontology in some way, or do we want to refer to how they relate to each other directly?
I certainly think it ought to be the latter, that that everything that we're documenting should be captured in the ontology, but the broker itself, the system that passes packets back and forth, is just assumed. That's like showing routers on this diagram. You don't really do that.
Right.
So then I think, I mean, again, in the interest of like what's the main expression here in the system landscape is what is the relationship between these things with respect to what ontology enables or allows for. So I guess I would vote for, yeah, so I'm with you, Mr. Kemp, would be to try somehow to manipulate this so that you have, the SIM talks to the SOAR, but it doesn't really talk to threat intelligence. I don't know if that's true or not, but we could argue, well, once you have a drawing, it gets easier to argue for or against in that way.
The attention here, and again, the reason I have it this way, with there not lines between these lines are representing the use case. So the use case I'm on is the endpoint malware discovery and where the events flow for that type of use case. Right, and then relate just to that use case, not to each other in all these systems. Right, I'm not trying to get there yet. I'm trying to figure out malware is detected. Where's it? What information gets sent to who's an interested party, and who acts on it. That's the intention of this. Okay. Not between these things yet, not yet. But that's why I wanted to make it very focused on the use case.
Okay.
So one way to approach that is just talk about one block in particular. Just focus on SIM for a minute and say, what is the API of a SIM system? It can, I'm looking at it's a description now, provides reports on security related incidents and events such as successful and failed logins or something. So you've got an event, the SIM detects an event and it sends somewhere. Yeah. So it's got an API that says, I've got an event. And so I'd like that, to be a particular message that a SIM sends.
Yes. Now the intention of that, just so you know, is to break down, to go to the C4 method, right? Let's go to the container level diagram and do that. So I agree with you, but the intent was not here, but to the next level down. I take each one of these blue boxes and all the gray ones that are appropriate and get into a component level diagram to do exactly what you just said. So I'm trying to decompose it as we go to each of these blocks one by one. Does that make sense?
Well, if you're going to decompose the SIM internally, yeah, I haven't seen the next slide yet, but this talks about how the SIM talks to the malware protection system.
That's correct. Yep.
So if the particular event message that goes from the SIM to malware protection or vice versa, would be shown on this diagram. And I guess we'll wait to the next slide. When you talk about the component diagram, is that decomposing the SIM component itself?
Yeah, now, just to be honest, I don't have a next diagram yet, because you can see how much work this is going to be I'm going to have to do the SIM, I'm going to have to do the SOAR, I'm going to have to do the intelligence system. So that's my work to follow forward, is when I have to do that. So the intention was, yes, that level, there'd be a bunch of SIM things that, receiving the event is a bunch of SIM actions that happen, APIs that get listened to. Then the other side, investigates, responds. There's a bunch of services inside the SIM that are dealing with that, different. There's the catcher and the pitcher, right? They're both in here doing things. And I'd have to represent that, right? So that's an example of, if I had to outline what my C4 diagram would work, my next one would be, if I just looked at the SIM, that would be clicked on, there would be more details around it, and all these other boxes would disappear, and I would describe what it's doing with any other system that in regards to this use case. And that's also where I describe the SIM talks to the SOAR and opens up a case as an example. Because that's what it does. It can do that. So there may be relationships that happen between these boxes I haven't got here yet. But when we decompose the malware actions for a SIM, there are definitely things that aren't on here that we have to describe what happens with what. What of these other boxes does it happen with? So again, that was the intention. If I start going and decomposing the SIM as we just described, then I should also do the SOAR and the threat intelligence and the malware email scanner and this, right? And eventually we got to do that, but I'm not sure I want to do this on one picture.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying you've got one line to the sim right now. Maybe
Yes.
you'd have two lines, a
Yeah.
gazettas and a gazzetta,
Yeah.
and you give those two lines names on
Yep.
this diagram.
Gotcha.
I have actually a question. Speaking of the gazindas and gazettas, which I love, that's
Oh,
awesome.
I love the term.
The coloring here, black and red. Is there a meaning for that?
Yeah,
Meaning
absolutely.
behind it?
Yeah, there is. So the black is dealing with the discovery of the event. These black lines, as you can see, these monitoring systems are the actions of discovering the malware. And when they do something if they discover. These black lines are showing that. These red lines are the actions that are happening. If you read the use case, the background that the SIM, SOAR, threat intelligence people are doing. Those are the red lines, and they are doing things, interrogating, talking, querying. So the red lines are kind of going from the bottom to the top, things happening from here into the system. And the black lines are things that are happening out from Bob's workstation in. So yeah, that was the intention. Now, whether I got them right or not is a very good question.
That's good. I think that's good. That's a good description. Could I make a request then to have the color you have a pretty good key there, but I would add the colored lines to your key with some words to that effect.
I agree, and I should have, and I thought I did, but I guess you're right, I didn't. I don't know what happened to those things. I will do so, yes.
Please.
I will do so. Yeah, absolutely. But that was the intent. I forgot to put that up there. Apologize. Good comments. Yep. Okay, you want me to keep describing it? So again, this I'll change based on what you guys were saying. It's the posture collection system over here, I think, is what I heard. Which is going to get postured in. I think I got to do a better job, but I can use you guys' help on doing a better job on describing how this interacts with the system. And I also think I need a query response here. I missed one here. You see this red line that goes up through stick shifter? There's probably another query response from these things to the posture system coming in. I think I just missed it. Now that I'm looking at it, that's just not right. Should be a red line coming in here, I think. Okay, and then I also tried to position stick shifter in here. I mean, stick shifter is, after, querying, you can use it to query observable objects that are out there on these systems, things like IP addresses or usernames and such. So I think there may be a flow that the stick shifter gets involved in that can, be used for operators to query and get context about information on Bob's workstation. And it probably should be a red line to the workstation itself. I missed that. There should be one in here. Anything else missing? So I've noticed those things are missing.
You might want to put as well, and I don't know if I've done this on the diagrams that I've worked on, but you might want to put a timestamp on these, like to the month perhaps, like circa Feb 2021, which gives a sense of when it was last updated. Because these will, it's pretty clear as if we go as crazy with this as we'd like to, we'll pretty soon make so many artifacts as I'll be unable to maintain them in an accurate fashion. So it'll have to, at least from the viewer's standpoint, we'll need to communicate roughly how new or old they are. And that gives them a fighting chance of understanding, like, oh, this looks like it's old.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. Maybe things haven't changed since then. But at least there's something there that gives you a sense of its. I realize that's also duplicating what might be happening in GitHub because there's timestamps there as well for the last commits. But it depends on kind of how. Now, I assume that these images or these SVGs and so forth they'll end up escaping GitHub and be,
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
In which case, then you end up leaving behind all that rich versioning information.
I completely agree with you. I agree. Good point. I'll do that. All right, so I just kind of want to share the methodology of what I did, took the use case, and I didn't reach out to Dave. So what I'm asking Dave for, just so you guys know, is I really want to start laying out these personas should have use cases also. What does an analyst do on a malware use case? I'd like to document what that is. I think they got that back to David, your point, what is he doing over here? And then we should also do it for the incident response team and also the threat intel. These people are doing things. We agree we want to put a line in here. And I think I need, use cases to describe their personas and what they're doing. So I asked David to help me with that. I'm looking for any other help that we can get if any of you have expertise in these areas, but I think that would be useful so that we can, when we do the red stuff, if you will, we'll have a better understanding of all the different things that could possibly be in play here for each of these users that we've identified that are relevant for this use case. So that's one thing I asked for. The other thing I'm asking for is obviously there's a lot of work here, and I'm all by myself, so I need some help to help me evolve this. Probably like you guys did, Adam and team, when you guys went off and Mitch, when you guys did your little seance together and worked on the diagram, I think I'll need a corollary group here to help me with these. And so I'm looking for help. If anybody wants to, help me struggle through this, I would love some company. And I'm intending to do maybe a weekly meeting when we're not meeting in the architecture group for about an hour, like you guys did. I think that worked out well, and just kind of take a pass at this together to fill out more of this information and get to the component levels and and continue to iterate on this. So I'm looking for help. And then the last thing I want to ask is, do you guys find this as a reasonable approach of how to kind of build out the architecture? Is this process that I'm going to use here seem like it'll get us to laying out a nice architecture, defines how all of our components will work together and how they interact with the systems, and give us something to kind of build around? Does this make sense as a way of getting there?
I think so. Again, we've got the 3 projects: the stick shifter, the ontology, and the posture.
Yep.
The ontology is, sort of a separate box off to the side that everything complies with it, but it's not a system in the middle.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'll take it out. But you're right. But it will, the idea, and we just talked about it, right? Any of these arrows, I think somebody said it properly, right? Any of these arrows is representing some work the ontology has to do.
Yes.
And
yes.
I agree. And that's great, because that gives us a checks and balance. And as we do the ontology work, we can focus on things that will help us get to a goal.
So I would rephrase it a little bit. It would be each of these processes should be represented in the ontology so that we can create semantic meaning to the data that's flowing according to those processes.
Fair enough.
It's not, I mean, the ontology isn't like a code with an execution code, right?
Right.
So, okay.
Right.
But your execution code should be written in such a way that it's using terms in the ontology to increase interoperability between the systems. Right.
And each of these systems will recognize such actions in the data exchange.
Yeah, and that what I think, there's a couple of different ways that can be implemented. You can somehow dictate that all the message traffic going around is in the formal ontology, or you can say, hey, look, we know you've already created your message traffic format in this way, but you need to put links to each thing, meaning mappings to the ontology so that it becomes interoperable until such time that we have everybody speaking Esperanto. Right.
Which is kind of the way this, if you're familiar with the stick shifter stuff, that's kind of the methodology it has. It's mapping to the sticks model from whatever local model you have.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. So that's very relevant. Any other comments? So if you guys are okay with this methodology, we'll keep proceeding on iterating on this, and I do want to get down to the lower level documents, the component level diagrams as well, and iterate on this so we can take each of these particular systems and get down to a level of what exactly is it doing in this use case with these other systems. How is it communicating using the ontology? What kind of actions is it taking through the ontology where it's appropriate? How does the posture collection system relate to these systems? The blue ones, right, and all that, and that's the kind of stuff I want to iterate with. Is to kind of what would we expect to want to have happen between these malware scanners, and I guess you guys have posture agents. I don't know how they relate, but it's a question I have. These things are always running. I kind of think of them as agents of this, but they're not. But how does that stuff work together is an under.
I do have one stray thought on this. If you're looking for additional help, maybe part of the answer is if you take something that looks like about this level of completion, take it to the OCA board. I imagine we have a fairly good cross section of skill sets represented there, and just simply ask them. All we need is somebody to review and edit. It's a short-term ask, it's small scope. Maybe we could get that kind of cooperation from them.
That's a good suggestion, Stephen. I don't know if you saw this, but I use the OCA broad distribution list to also, introduce the architecture team to everybody in OCA, since I finally got access to that, which has, hundreds of people on it versus the 11 or 12 in the architecture email list. And I did get a couple of responses back from people there. So I agree. I think some of what I got to do now is just get visible with this stuff so I can find people that could help us. I agree.
I've got kind of a off the topic philosophical question. If you get rid of all of the boxes in this use case except, say, Bob's PC and SOAR, for example, you got a system with 2 boxes. Somewhere you're going to have a list of all the PCs in your enterprise. Mm-hmm. And for the posture assessment system, we said, we need a posture attribute repository, but we really need an enterprise repository that tells you, what assets you have. So I haven't seen an asset repository in any of these products. I don't think SEAM provides that repository. So I think sometime we're going to need, an Active Directory or something that lists all of the PCs that we know about. And so that'll have to go into all the diagrams, I think.
I'm surprised you didn't use the CMDB term.
Yeah, that's what I would think of when I see assets. Yeah.
Okay. CMDB. That's a great term. I didn't know it.
Yeah, that's what it's for. Yeah.
Okay, so when you have SEAM and SOAR and you're talking about events, they have to be events related to some asset that's in your CMDB. So we may want to start showing that. And then the posture piece, which is what I care about, can talk to that CMDB.
Okay. Yep. So that wasn't so philosophical.
Well, I'm glad you put a name to it. So thank you.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, CMDBs. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? I think other than that, I'm done with this topic. As I said, this is a first pass at this stuff, so I'm still learning. I appreciate every comment you guys have made. I'll see what I can do to update it properly, and I'm sure I won't get it all right. So please feel free to edit it. This stuff will get posted out in the GitHub. It is now, and I'll update it as I update these diagrams. And anybody wants to help me and wants to join me on a weekly call to work on this, I'd love the help. And I am soliciting folks as well to help me. And as I said, I did get some feedback from people that didn't even know what we were doing in the architecture group. So that's a good news story. We're getting more visible. So that's the end of this topic. Anybody have any other open topics you guys want to address or add to the cadence that we're having?
Nothing here.
I'll try to have a system level diagram next time around. You had me on the agenda and I didn't get that work done.
Yeah, I didn't see the branch, so I assumed he got busy this week. It's not a problem. You guys have been awesome. So you get a reprieve. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me struggle for a week, Mitch.
I have to say, I'm happy that you're dipping your toe into this. This is the C4 pool, as it were, which is useful. And I think just a quick follow-on comment to the C4 diagramming model. There's if we really get into this, like if we get more people doing the diagramming in this mode, is a tool called structurizer.com. That's and they might be able to give the OCA a break, and we can potentially use their tool to help manage lots of diagrams in this form. I don't have any any stock options or anything I don't work for Structurizer, so it's only a pitch for a tool that might make it a little bit easier to manage lots and lots of them if we get.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, when I was looking at this work here, I just see the number of diagrams being, I don't know, almost 100 by the time I'm done.
It can explode. Yeah. So anyhow, there's tools out there to help us manage this, and I think there's 2 of us now. Well, maybe more actually. This, I guess, is 4 of us that are working in this mode. So yeah, there it is. Mr. Montville just provided the link to the chat.
Yeah.
Anyhow, just a note there.
That's a good point. So you think it's of value I think you're right. Once we get, because otherwise it's just raw GitHub, which isn't quite managing it.
How about this? Maybe a fun thing for people. I'm going to do it myself, so maybe I could report back as well. I'm going to just try this. I just signed up for a free account.
Okay.
And just to poke around it and see what value it provides. I'm probably considering, if it works out, I'll consider this internally for Tripwire. And we use a system called Confluence for managing a lot of our artifacts, and there's an integration with Confluence for Structurizer. But anyway, I'm going to poke around, and maybe I could provide a report back, but do so. Okay. I would recommend other people to poke around in this tool as well.
That's a great idea. Okay, thanks. Any other topics anybody wants to add or bring up for the next call? Otherwise, we'll just keep cranking.
No other topics for me.
Is the person or is anybody on the team who's developing the ontology? I'm sorry, the OpenDXL ontology. Any of those team on the phone today?
No, I don't see anybody here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have reached out to those guys. I have reached out to them and talked to them a little bit about it, but he hasn't started it up yet, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't see anybody on this call that's on the ontology team.
And Adam, can you have time for a couple minutes afterwards to talk? I'll just call you directly.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks for attending our call. I do appreciate your input.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.